In a talk, there's generally three big areas. There's the intro, there's the body, and then there's the conclusion. A lot of people skip over the value of this because we have to remember either people have a great first impression on you, right? Which is usually in the first 5 seconds up to a minute of when you're on there and you're on stage. How are you building that rapport? How are you answering their questions of what's in it for me? Should I listen? Should I tune out? But people will always remember how they feel at the very end with you. So my key here for you today as you listen in is I'm going to give you the 5 key tips to having a masterful conclusion. Hey, welcome back to the Strategic Life Podcast. It's your host, Jake Haveron today. And today I have a solo episode here. Think of this one as more of like a little mini masterclass, right? I just want to give you value, give you wisdom. It's not going to be too long on here. So I'm really excited to be able to have this today because, you know, what sparked this idea on why I wanted to share this is I was recording new content for It Factor Mentorship. This is a program that Emily and I are doing together, and we'll talk about that more later. And I love teaching on one of our 3 pillars, which is speaking. And speaking is so powerful. And before you think, oh, Jake, there's no way I'm going to be speaking, or I'm a speaker, or I'm not like on stages like you or anything like that, don't discredit yourself, because to be honest, even if you are speaking in the corporate world, like to an employee, to a coworker, to your boss, to if you're speaking to a group of people about an idea or a product or a service, this training today will be so valuable because it's 5 key tips that most people don't do in their speaking. And I'll give you exactly where we're going to be talking about on this today. So don't tune out. This will be so powerful to have, because whether you're currently doing this or it's something you eventually want to do, which is getting to more professional speaking, you're going to really stand out from the pack on this. And so when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about just how many times I've seen speakers do this wrong. And let me ask you, actually, imagine back when you heard maybe the last keynote speaker or a keynote speaker in your past, and you hear them talking, they're giving all this good value, and you're kind of listening, but maybe you're not so much, but you're there, you're aware, and they just keep talking, and then out of nowhere they say, all right, well, thank you so much for being here, appreciate you, and yeah, I'll be out on the side if you want to connect. And everyone starts applauding, and then you're like, well, I should applaud. Have you ever had that before? It's kind of awkward, right? And you're probably like, well, Jake, what the heck are you even, like, what's the point here? What the point is that this person didn't know how to properly set up a conclusion to their talk. Because in a talk, there's generally 3 big areas. There's the intro, there's the body, and then there's the conclusion. And that's a whole different type of training for the intro and body. That's actually what we train tactically in the It Factor Mentorship. But today I want to talk about the conclusion, because a lot of people skip over the value of this because we have to remember either people have a great first impression on you, right? Which is usually in the first 5 seconds up to a minute of when you're on there and you're on stage. How are you building that rapport? How are you answering their questions of what's in it for me? Should I listen? Should I tune out? Should I check my phone? Should I be locked in? But people will always remember how they feel at the very end with you. The last few minutes, refreshing you on the content you taught, leaving them with an empowering message. Yes, the content in the middle matters, but the ending is where they have that last little like tie, last little bow tie on the gift, saying either this was an incredible gift, thank you for giving me this, or wait, what am I receiving again? This was all so much, right? So my key here for you today as you listen in is I'm going to give you the 5 key tips to having a masterful conclusion. Now, are these the only 5 tips? No. These are just, I was thinking, is there going to be 3 key tips? Is there going to be 4? And I was like, you know what? There's subtle little nuances I didn't want to glance over or glaze over here. And I was like, I'm going to put this in here. So we have 5 key tips here. So if you're taking notes, good job. If you're driving, don't take notes and drive. That might be a little tough. Maybe you come back to this later, but make sure you take notes on this somehow or some way, because this will be really profound. So without further ado, let's dive into it. Key tip number 1 is the transition phrase from when you're finishing your last topic to now getting into your conclusion, right? You got to imagine this. You got to imagine your talk, your conversation is like, let's say it's like a flight, right? You're on a plane, and somebody would be like, oh my gosh, I don't like planes, right? Oh, I'm pretty sure, just imagine this, okay? Your intros, your takeoff, your body of the talk is the experience in between, the content, the value, and all that. And then the conclusion is when you start to land the plane. Now, a lot of speakers that don't do this effectively, they go from a 10,000 foot altitude to literally 10 feet in a couple seconds. And it's very abrupt. It causes a lot of turbulence, and it wasn't able to be anticipated, so the people that are riding in the plane don't like it, right? It feels off. Well, it's the same thing with the conclusion. So the first tip here is to have a transitionary phrase that starts to prep people that you're about to land. Just like how the captain comes up and says, all right, we are descending here to our destination, so get your last little bit of drink in, or go use the bathroom before we put the seatbelt signs on, right? This is the transitionary sentence, and it's for you as well. So the transitionary sentence is as simple as we bring all of this together, or as we come to a close, or as we bring all this to a close, whatever you want to say. This is a general phrase, but practice it, because it should be second nature as you go from a topic, the last topic, to your conclusion. You're sharing about your last topic and you're giving some examples. And if there's another method we teach, which is called the 3 T's, you're doing, tell, teach, tool. You're finishing up with the tool part of it, giving them things to be equipped with, and they're all excited and whatnot. You say, awesome. Well, hey, as we bring this to a close, I know this has been so amazing with the content you guys have been interacting with. It's incredible to see what you guys are doing, whatever you want to say after that. But the key phrase is, as we bring this to a close, you're reminding the people and prepping them for your incredible land of this trip. So that's key point number 1. Subtle, but huge difference what happens, all right? Key point number 2, key tip number 2 is to refresh people on the content. So if I was, for me, like I was speaking on one of my keynote talks, which is the Blueprint to Human Influence. I have 4 pillars to influence, and I go through them all in depth. That's the body of it, right? You might be someone that is, you're doing a health and wellness presentation, and your 3 topics, whether they're very cut to the point or they're kind of just all over the place, it could be like a story here, nutrition here, and then science, right? Those are like the 3 things you talked about. So what you want to do for this second key point is you want to refresh people. So I'll say, as we come to a close here, and I appreciate you all for playing full out. This was, I could see the transformations happening within you. So I want to remind you, pillar number 1 for the Blueprint to Human Influence is this, right? And I say it out, and you should know this about that. And then, pillar number 2 is this. And remember how we talked about you should do this, not that, right? You're refreshing them so that it is on top of mind again, so then it actually sticks, right? Be the one that shows that you are so competent with your knowledge. Even if you were in that health and wellness pitch, you were saying, and as we come to a close here, just remember, like, the science, as we talked about, is what matters. Knowing the difference between grass-fed versus not grass-fed. Remember that story about John, how John, thought he was so burnt out and he didn't have time to do anything, but he did this and this, and now here he is. Like, some of you, I feel like you could be like that as well. You're refreshing the people, and that's why key point number 2 is having that refresh people on the content. Now, key point number 3 is another transitionary phrase. This is like the last little embrace before impact. It's really getting people prepped. You first let them know that there's a descending happening, and to get ready for that. Then you refresh people on the content, so now they're back to top of mind. And now this transitionary sentence is, It's funny, I use this sentence in so many different ways. I actually use this sentence a lot when someone keeps, like, let's say I'm on a prospect call or someone's on like business opportunity and they keep talking. I'm like, oh my gosh, time's getting close. We got to really wrap this up. I use this sentence because it helps frame them to know that we're about to end this call. I say this: I'll leave you with this. I'll say it again. I'll leave you with this. So as you share the content and refresh them with it and say, remember, key point number 1 was this, key point number 2 is this, 3, 4, awesome. Now I'll leave you with this. And that's all you have to say. Because now they know that this is the last thing you're going to say, so then they can expect for it to be done. Now, does that sound kind of weird, like they're going to expect to be done? No. What that means is that they can be fully attentive. The audience or the people listening can, maybe not be tuning out anymore and get this last little message. And the most important thing is that when you do this, it's going to get everyone on the same page. So when you're done, everyone's going to like give you a nice round of applause or a standing ovation, where before, like how you said, there was that one person that went from 10,000 elevation to 10 super quick. You were like stunned. You didn't know, are we done? Do I applause? Like it's kind of awkward. It doesn't leave a good impression on you. So having this phrase, I'll leave you with this, will be a game changer. Just as much if I was in that call that I knew we had to wrap up, where I'll say, you know what, John, hey, that's great you said this. And I'll leave you with this because we are getting at the end of time here. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, yeah. Like I don't have to say anything more, but they already know it. I'll say, I'll leave you with this. And then I go on. And then that way we could land that plane as well. So that's a little pro tip on you. All right, key tip number 4 is you say the words, I'll leave you with this, and then you always find a way, especially on a signature talk, especially in a presentation, something that you are really wanting to leave an unforgettable impression. You always leave with an emotional story. And this emotional story is meant to encapsulate and put that bow tie on that gift of the message you're trying to portray. So for my signature talk, which is the Blueprint to Human Influence, it's all about the power of influence, right? I believe influence is your most powerful skill. And so you would leave with a message and a story that actually puts that message in it. So then people will have more of an unforgettable impression with you, right? People remember stories longer than the message. So if you're only teaching messages without the story, it will only go so far. But if you're teaching stories that have the message within it, it actually goes further because the story is the vehicle, the message is the passenger. That's why even for 2,000 plus years, whether you believe it or not, it's irrelevant in that sense. The Bible has stories that still are taught today because the messages within it are carried through those stories, right? This is how, before there was really even much competency between humans, there was always stories that told messages, and it carried through generation through generation through generation. And Jesus, having these complex and very just high frequency messages that was hard to translate to the current society at the time, who 90%, statistics show around 90% were incompetent, meaning they didn't know how to write or really, they could speak their language, but they had not much literature skills to them. Jesus had to take these complex meanings and messages and moral truths and teach them through simple to understand stories, which are called parables. Parables are stories that teach moral truths or moral messages. And that's why it's still relevant to this day, right? The story of the gardener, right? Pruning the branches that are not serving the overall vine and throwing it into the fire, or not helping people fish but teaching them how to fish, right? Becoming a fisher of men, right? If you told someone someone back then and say, I'm going to have you go and recruit our people and bring them to Christianity or bring them to my truth, right? Christianity wasn't really even a thing. It was Jesus. Christianity came from the resurrection of Jesus. But they wouldn't understand that. They'd be like, what? This makes no sense. This seems like it's not for me. But when he says, I'll teach you how to be fisher of men, especially when he told that to Peter, who was a fisherman, it made sense to him because it was a story, a message, a vehicle that portrayed this. So why am I sharing this? I'm sharing this because when you leave an emotional story as you wrap up with your conversation, as you wrap up with your keynote or your signature talk or your presentation, you're going to create a more unforgettable impression in there. So my call to action for you is to think about a story. You have to be intentional with it. Don't just try to pull it off the top of your head. You have to be intentional. Be like, what is the story I'm going to put? What is it? The story about when I left nursing and how that changed my life? Is it the story about Tony Robbins and how I told him I was going to speak on stage all over the world? Is it the story about a past client that I was working with and they had a very transformational experience with our coaching program? Like, what is it? And write it down and think about it, right? And be intentional, so then that way it really hits home and that message is so clear to them. Is it making sense so far? I hope it is, right? And lastly, key tip number 5, we're about to get that here in a second, but I do want to share this. If you're someone that's listening right now and you know that whether you're in a product business, service business, you run a brick and mortar, you're a realtor, you're a network marketer, and you feel like you can take the next level, or there's something that's been calling you that you need the direct mentorship, you need the guidance, you need the strategies, not so much the motivation, right? The motivation will always be there, but the strategies on building a personal brand that helps to sell itself, right? Building this brand that's actually an asset. This is where no matter what business or where you go, people will follow you. Or you need to really get good at sales. Like, you're doing okay in sales, but you need to learn how to start selling high ticket if you're a coach, or mastering the high ticket. Or you need to know how to be more ethically congruent in your sales you're doing right now, so you can actually close more deals but have better experiences with people where they have more satisfaction, right? You don't want to deal with these people saying, oh, I don't know, this is weird, and now they don't want to do it, and now you feel bad. You want to know how to do sales right. Or you are in the position like you are, that what we're teaching right now, which is you want to become a speaker. You want to get paid to speak. You want to maybe get on more stages so you could share about your message, your mission, your opportunity. You could get more clientele through that because they are listening to you and you are the authority in the front, but you make sure every single person knows that they are just as valuable in the audience, and that's what makes you an incredible speaker. Maybe that's you. Well, if that's you, I just want to share that all this content that I'm bringing to you here today is about a small percentile of the tactical training we do in the It Factor mentorship. This is something that Emily Ford and I, if you don't know Emily, she's my beloved, and she is just a force of her own. If you don't know who she is yet, go search her up. You'll see. But we've done this It Factor mentorship program to help people like you fast track their success in branding, speaking, and selling. And built on a foundation of faith, right? We don't just teach training on these business areas, but we also train on depth in your spiritual walk, right? We are very open about that. We have people of all different beliefs and backgrounds in our program, but we are very open with how we really believe our success was from the Holy Spirit in that sense. So we are open about that, but even if that is something that is not for you right now, the branding, speaking, selling could be massive in the way that we have the video step-by-step programs for you. We have weekly calls that you'll be in with us that we train and also do live Q&As. You have direct consulting capabilities where if you have a specific question, this isn't a membership group where you are just another number. You can ask direct consulting questions and we're going to answer that. If you want all of this or want to learn more about it, just click the link below. It's itfactormentorship.com. And you could check out more details on that and get on a call with either Emily or I or both of us, and we could answer questions and see if this would be a good fit for you. So I just wanted to plug that in here because it would be a disservice, because this is literally the things I'm teaching to you here in this podcast. So let's get back to the last and final tip, which is tip number 5 is most times when you're speaking on stages, right? This could even be virtual too. But I've seen people that when they speak and it was an incredible talk, and the moment they say they're done, thank you so much, they literally run off. Like, not run, but they scurry off. And people are applauding. And I remember I was one of those people applauding. I'm like, wait, why are they going? They just literally gave us a 60-minute talk. This was incredible. Or they just gave us a training and now they're kind of like just done with us. Like, it feels weird. So what my key tip is, and this is the last little subtle one, that can really just put that final impression on the people, is stand there and embrace the applause. So if you're on stage, you're in front of the room for a presentation, if you're even on virtual, if you're there and once you say thank you so much, right, and they're all applauding you, just stand there and embrace it. Stand tall. Don't look like you're getting nervous. I know some of you, I've had some people where they're like, I feel a little like weird to get all this applause, so that's why I just leave. I'm like, no, like that's maybe an insecurity thing, which is okay to have, but we got to fix that because it shows that there are some insecurities. And if you're going to be on stage teaching your message or really moving people, put off that confidence that, yes, I do appreciate you. I do acknowledge you, right? Because you don't want the audience to be applauding and their applause feel like it's going nowhere because you're gone already. That actually puts some awkwardness on the audience, which is what you don't want to do. So stand there, embrace it, and not only does it give that off to the audience, so it's that last little impression, but it also builds that confidence muscle within you, right? Standing there, even if you feel uncomfortable, which I've heard this before from people, stand there, stand tall, embrace it, have a smirk on your face, and just say, thank you, like just, whatever you want to do. Just give it a couple seconds, and that's just going to wrap it up here. So as we wrap up overall and really come to close on this podcast, there's 5 key tips. Remember these things. Number 1 is the transition to go from your topic to your conclusion, where you could say, as we bring this to a close, as we come towards the end, whatever sentence it is, just make sure you are embracing people for the landing. Number 2 is you're going to refresh people on the content, kind of just like what I'm doing here. There's a reason why it works, right? Number 3 is you have the next transition, which is the last transition before you're done. And this is that last little reminder, which is, I'll leave you with this. I'll leave you with this. Number 4 is to have that emotional story that you leave them with. Let it really sink in deep. Let that message you've been constantly chipping away at through your talk, let this be that last little bit that has that breakthrough where people just really feel that message. And tip number 5 for having a masterful conclusion in your talk is to embrace the applause and stand there with confidence, because if you were on that stage and you just crushed it and people are standing and applauding, or they're just applauding from the seats, you deserve that. And it goes a long way for you to receive that because you just gave so much. So take a couple seconds and receive that, okay? So that's about it for this episode here. I will say this, if this helped you or resonated with you, make sure to share this podcast and tag me on Instagram at jcavron. Take a screenshot of this podcast right now and be like, you know what? This is what I took away from it. Because you could give value to your people, which will build your own personal brand, but I would be able to personally see that, and I'd love to shout you out and restore you and be able to see what stood out for you, right? This is a constant dialogue. I love learning what's sticking to you. I love creating content that works with you. So this is how we speak to each other in that way. And if you know someone that this could really help, especially if they're getting in the speaking game or they are, and you know that this could be valuable, it'd be so much if you could just share that to them. It means so much to me. So other than that, make sure that you reach out to us if you are interested in the Factor mentorship. That is below in the show notes. And I'm so grateful to be just constantly giving you this value. So thank you for taking some time with this solo episode. And as always, go create your strategic life, and I'll see you in the next episode.